he intended to play for the New York Jets. If he had just said, I intend to play, maybe the Jets would have a little bit more leverage and the Packers wouldn't have the hammer over the Jets right now in terms of compensation. Here's my suggestion. The Packers want that first round pick, which is 13th overall. That's a pretty valuable piece. Give them that pick. Give them the third round pick, and then have the Packers send back the Jets a second round pick. I mean, Belichick's famous for this, right? Like, balancing things off with, 2 draft picks for one. So give the Packers the first and third round picks and get back a second round pick. And I think that could get it done. And then figure out how much of the money the Packers are going to pay, or if the Jets are going to pay the entire salary, which I think they can because they have a lot of room because they have such a young team and those players haven't been paid yet. But that's just my suggestion. And I'm here available to help things out.
Yeah, you can contact John. It's John Sapp at, well, I don't want to give away your whole email there, but no, but to your point, and this is something Belichick was obviously very good at, is not overvaluing draft picks. And fans aren't the only ones that are guilty of doing this, because people look at it and be like, oh my God, the 13th overall pick. Well, who the hell cares? You know how many times the Jets have had something of like the 13th overall pick or better? I'm going to go out on a limb and say the majority of the last 20 years they've had that. So the problem is people look at that and say, oh, you're going to get the best player available at 13, or the best player in the draft at 13. Unlikely. Okay, it's a crapshoot. It really is. I mean, there's very few sure things in the NFL. Just go back a few years ago when the Bucs ended up getting Tristan Wirfs. There was 4 huge tackles that everyone was talking about. These guys are can't miss NFL ready guys, and very often Tristan Wirfs was number 4 out of those 4. And guess what? He is very clearly the best, if not one of the best left tackles in the league. So or right tackles in the league rather. So it's really a crapshoot. So if you're the Jets, what are you going to get at 13 that's going to bring back the same type of value that even a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers would give you?
Yeah, you've got to take a chance, right? I mean, here's your opportunity. Young, talented defense, some nice pieces on offense. Maybe you shore up that offensive line later in the draft or through free agency or through coaching or whatever. But you go get that elite quarterback that, quite frankly, you haven't had since Joe Namath. We're going back over 50 years ago. I heard something this weekend that I still can't believe. The Jets have won 2 division titles since they won that Super Bowl back in 1969. Like, I was too lazy to do the research on it, but that's what I heard. 2 division titles, and they play in a division with 4 teams. Like, you just think by accident you win more than 2 division titles over a 50-year stretch. But be relevant, go get them, bring all that excitement to the Jets. Now, we don't know how he's going to play. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a lot better than Zach Wilson was last year, or Mike White. I mean, I think he can do that playing left-handed. So, yeah, don't get caught up on that. The 13th pick is nice. And maybe, again, you just kind of massage it this way by adding in some other picks, and you don't feel like you got held up by the Packers. And the Packers do have the power because that contract doesn't go into effect. Rodgers' contract doesn't go into effect until September 1, so they could let this linger. But do you want this going on in training camp with your new starting quarterback, Jordan Love? Like, if you're the Packers, you want to move on from him, move on from him. If you're the Jets, just go get him. Because let's not forget, in about a month and a half, we're going to have a TV schedule released. And I know it doesn't sound all that deep to bring this up, but TV rules in the NFL. I'm sure that the networks want to know if Aaron Rodgers is playing in New York or not, because if he is, they'll be on the maximum amount of primetime games. If he's not, they'll be on fewer. So that's part of it as well. Maybe the commissioner steps in and says, guys, get this done. He wants to go there. You want to get rid of him. What's the issue?
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's just a dicey situation, because like really I feel like all the negative that can come from any party, whether holding this up or whatever, it's worth taking to some extent. So like you were talking about the Packers, obviously having the ability to technically hold on to him till September 1st. And yeah, is it going to bring some negativity towards them? Sure. But it might be worth it, if they're petty enough. You know what I mean? Like, because it's not going to necessarily hurt them long term. It might be a slight distraction. But at the end of the day, they've already moved on. They have their starting quarterback. This isn't like if they're going to hold on to him now, it's going to bring in doubt. It's like, no, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers is still on the roster come September 1st, he's either going to get traded that day or he's going to be a backup. I mean, that's the reality of it. So for the Packers, they can do that if they want. I mean, it really depends on how vindictive they want to be. If this whole situation has really soured them to the point of wanting to kind of take an extra jab, and to the point you already always bring up. The Packers aren't a one owner or a family owned organization. There's no doesn't seem like they have that same sort of relationship or potential relationship one owner could have with various players. So you're missing that personal part of it. So hey, you know what? If the Packers want to make this a mess, they can. For the Jets, you desperately want to get him in the mix now, not just because you want to know for sure, but the reality of it is, regardless of who he is, you want him in training camp early. You want him at OTAs. You want him in all these team activities because, he's got to endear himself to his teammates and not the ones that are coming over from the Packers like Alan Lazard. I'm talking about the new teammates, the ones that, they respect his body of work, but the reality of it is they want to win and they want to be led. They want to be a winning organization. And in order to do that, you need your best player, in this case, Aaron Rodgers, to be there from day one and kind of take charge. So if you're the Jets, you want to get this done for many reasons. If you're the Packers, you can drag this out a little bit longer and not really have an impact on your 2023 season.
I'm sure the Jets marketing staff, their sales staff, is anxiously waiting, because if this gets done, say, this week, now they can go full bore and sell those corporate sponsorships. I mean, look, it's still a bottom line business, right? I mean, season ticket sales, they'll jump a little bit as well. I'm not sure what the situation is with the Jets. If they're sold out, most NFL teams are pretty much maxed out with season tickets, especially a market that size. But just think of the excitement that this would create and how much money would bring into the Jets and all of that.
Just look to Tampa a couple of years ago and the impact just Tom Brady signing alone had, not only on, say, the expectations for the team, but season ticket sales, the excitement, everything around it. So I mean, that's a great point. And for a team like the Jets, who inherently have a huge market. I mean, if you're a New York-based team in one of the big professional leagues in this country, guess what? It doesn't matter how bad you are, you're still going to have a market. You're going to still have opportunity to take advantage of that, and that's exactly what the Jets have. You bring in not only one of the best quarterbacks of this generation, but you bring in a polarizing figure, something that really plays well in New York and can really grab headlines negatively or positively. So regardless, you're getting a lot of attention from everywhere when you sign or acquire Aaron Rodgers, and you obviously hope you turn that attention into something positive.
Yeah, the Yankees, Knicks, and Rangers would like to see this happen too, because he'll suck all the oxygen up. And oftentimes, New York, like Boston and Philadelphia, there's not a lot of negativity in sports talk radio. So, the Knicks, the Rangers, not that much. No, not at all. It's
not at all.
Quite like
it's not like that's the
like
foundation of sports talk in this region, and I'm referring to Boston. So
you're still a Bostonian.
Of course I am. Of course I am.
Displaced Bostonian in nicer weather.
Yes.
Sure. But I mean, obviously, if the Jets and Giants do have some sort of off-field rivalry, what's bigger news? Daniel Jones re-signed with the Giants, or Aaron Rodgers was traded to the Jets.
Right.
I mean, just think of that. Win for the Jets. Yeah, just get this done. Then, obviously, when you get to OTAs, I want to make sure he's there. I'm sounding like I'm Woody Johnson here, but I want to see him there to get involved with his young receivers like Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall should be back from that knee injury as his fine running back and kind of fine-tune that offensive line. It's fortunate that if he goes there, he's going to have Nathaniel Hackett as his offensive coordinator, who he had for 3 years in Green Bay. Look, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers' offense. They run kind of a variation of the West Coast, so I think he'll pick that up fine. But everybody else is going to have to get on board with that. But if this thing lingers on, it's going to weaken both teams, I think, because you just want to get this over with. If you Green Bay, move on, and the Jets certainly want to get him on board.
Well, and plus, I mean, if you're the Jets, I mean, what other options do you have at this point? I mean, you're pretty much left with Aaron Rodgers, or I don't know, some veteran retread. You know what I mean? Like, who else?
Matt Ryan?
Exactly. So, for the Jets, this is the difference between possibly being a playoff contender and just being the Jets. And that's, maybe approaching a 500 record and doing some nice things, but eventually seeing your star young players bolt in free agency when they realize, well, it's the Jets and we're never going to win anything. So, and look, I mean, acquiring Aaron Rodgers is no slam dunk either. I mean, I brought it up last week. I mean, this isn't Tom Brady to the Buccaneers. And look, we can go back and you can see that I predicted them winning that Super Bowl, by the way, back in I think March or April. It's on paper. It's down there. It's on the interwebs. So so I can confidently say that I was right there. But this will certainly improve the Jets' chances and could be what really Aaron Rodgers needs to kind of get over the hump, and that is a new opportunity. This is a guy that we talked about last week who could drastically alter his legacy with another Super Bowl win. Tom winning the Super Bowl with the Bucs a couple years ago was only icing on the cake. Obviously, it helped that it came over Patrick Mahomes, and that will be a factor later on in these discussions. But for him, it didn't matter if he won or not. It just helped quite a bit that he did. For Aaron Rodgers, I think there's a huge set of implications here for him to win. And if he does go out and win, I think it's going to be a huge boost for him and how people view him in a historical standpoint. So, anyways, we we don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers this whole time. I mean, we do, but let's give attention to some other things because Brandon Cooks has been traded for the 54th time in his young career. This time, though, he's actually going to a place that has a quarterback. And he's, since his stop with Tom Brady, it's and a brief time with obviously Los Angeles, he's really kind of gone on that almost Andre Johnson like run with poor quarterbacks. Coincidentally, he was with the Texans for a while, so kind of makes sense considering they've never had a quarterback, especially their first quarterback, David Carr. I mean, they're both the same thing. I mean, I don't honestly. I can never tell the difference between the two, and I'm surprised that I haven't mixed up their names more often. But this time, though, Brandon Cooks going to Dallas, and I like the move a lot for Dallas. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott this year, and I think some of that there's doubts certainly or questions about his abilities moving forward and what he can do for the Cowboys. But they actually got him a really good quote unquote second receiver and a guy who I think can still really play because despite the revolving door of quarterbacks that he's played with, Brandon Cooks has put up some really good numbers and he's a mismatch in a lot of situations.
Yeah, especially as being the number 2 receiver behind CD Lamb. I mean, that's a good combo there, right? So take some pressure off of CD Lamb, gives Dak Prescott another option. Couple that with the fact that they brought in Stephon Gilmore last week to be their second cornerback. The Cowboys have made some nice moves. They've moved on from Zeke Elliott, try to save some money there. Zeke was a shell of himself, particularly the last couple of years. So, yeah, the Cowboys always have pretty good drafts as well. I mean, we can all make fun of Jerry Jones. He's pretty good at drafting players. I'll be honest with you right now here on March 20th, by the way, is Bobby Orr's 75th birthday. Which makes me feel really old because that was my first sports idol, Robert Gordon Orr, turned 75 today. Happy birthday to the great number 4. But today I would be picking the Cowboys to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. First of all, no one ever repeats in the NFC East. The last time a team repeated as division champs in the NFC East was the Eagles in 2004. So I think the Cowboys will win the NFC East this year and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That would be interesting. But yeah.
Well, the opportunities are there. I mean, this NFC right now is very, very weak, and we've seen. Look, obviously, Philadelphia is going to have a lot of credibility going into next season, but they've lost some of their key players. Just like any Super Bowl participating team, you're going to get poached in the offseason, especially when you have guys that are due paydays. So, like the reality of it is well. Who is there really in the NFC? I mean, you can, cross the Bucks off the list. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender with Baker Mayfield. Pretty much anyone in the NFC South. I mean, again, I think the Saints are going to be better and probably the best team in that division. But how much better with Derek Carr? I don't think so. I don't. This is a guy that's been sub 500 his entire career. I'm not going to sit here and all of a sudden say that he's going to be somewhat different than what we've seen the first 9 seasons of his career. So, yeah, I mean, really, the NFC is wide open, and not like wide open. Like, there's just a lot of mediocre to bad teams, and a lot of that you can see is rooted in who's playing quarterback for each of these teams.
I think Detroit's the best team in the NFC
Oh
North.
yeah,
I really do. Without question, the way they finished, the program they've built there. Minnesota went 13-4 last year, but they were 11-0 in one-score games. That has a
oh
tendency
yeah,
of regressing.
yeah.
They'll be 8-9, right? 9-8 maybe. Same thing
Well,
with the Giants. A
yeah.
lot of close wins. So those two teams may regress.
I mean, I like the Giants' long-term outlook a lot better than Minnesota. I think watching that Minnesota team, excuse me, watching that Minnesota team last year was, I mean, it was just obvious from the get-go that this team just wasn't as good as its record was, and really, I mean, that's about. I mean, that's about the best you're going to get out of Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get much better than if you're not going to get that out of him again. I don't think so. Minnesota, yeah, I mean, easily. I mean, 8-9, 7-10, even. I mean, this team, I don't think is. They haven't really done anything this offseason to make you feel like they're retooling or regrouping. The Packers, I think, are a question mark. I mean, obviously, I'm very interested to see how Jordan Love does, and he may be ready to take that reign, or it might be a year or two away from them contending, and then, well, then you have the Lions. So, or I'm sorry, the Bears, who I like. Look, I think that the funny thing is the Bears and the Lions are probably the best two teams in the NFC right now, or at least based on their off season, what they've done this off season so far. They clearly look like the teams that have obviously improved the most, but certainly have the highest ceiling of all four of those teams. So, but yeah, I like what the Lions have done. That's the other question, though, John. Can Jared Goff have another season like he did last year?
He played great last year. He really did.
He was really good last year. That's the issue, though. Is that the absolute best you're going to get out of Jared Goff? And if the answer is yes, then, well, this Lions team probably is maybe not going to regress, but they may be better in certain areas, just not as good on offense, and that's a pretty big deal. But I'm not saying that's going to happen. I actually don't think that's going to happen. Even if, say, Jared Goff doesn't play as well, I still think that they're going to be pretty darn good on offense because they have a lot of talent, and I think they're well coached. So, but yeah, I mean, going back to the Cowboys, though, if you're the Cowboys, yeah, you absolutely have to take a shot. And look, this is a huge season for Dak Prescott. You're giving him the weapons that, like, I understand that he faced heavy criticism last year, and he deserved it. He threw a lot of interceptions, and that is not something a winning quarterback can do. But his, the one excuse that you could say maybe is a little valid is, well, who does he have to throw to outside of CD Lamb? Well, now he has that guy, and there's plenty of offense or plenty of talent on this offense. So there's really no excuse for him not to perform. So you're going to find out a lot about this Cowboys team this season, whether or not this is a team that's going to actually continue to contend or something you might consider blowing up. Because look, if Dak Prescott can't get it done with this group, then you might seriously have to consider tearing it down and regrouping, and that might be a tough pill to swallow for Jerry Jones.
And the fact that he has a top 5 defense, and you've added Stephon Gilmore.
Yep.
I mean, they have a really, really good defense. Look, they didn't lose that playoff game to San Francisco because of their defense. They lost it because Dak Prescott had 2 horrible turnovers, and they couldn't muster enough points to win that game. Their defense was good against San Francisco in the divisional round, so you feel good about Dallas' defense. They have some nice pieces on offense. A lot of this falls on Dak Prescott. If he elevates and plays the way he did, say, in 2018, or even, before he got injured in 2020, then maybe you've got something there. And the talent's certainly there. Just trying to break through is a whole other thing. But yeah, as of today, my Super Bowl pick is Dallas, Cincinnati. Now that can change with more free agency signings and what happens in the draft, but Bengals, Cowboys in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, hey, it's
Sure,
not. It's
neither
not.
one of them will make it, knowing my track
I
record.
mean, you just doomed them both. So, although I do believe Dallas, they're pretty much screwed no matter what. So, um, yeah, no, look, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Um, before we go, we got to get off the air here soon. I do want to mention the Boston Bruins. Um, they are currently right now at 53 wins on the season. They are plus 113, John. Plus 113. Um, that is, let's put it this way: the second best team in the league right now, Carolina, in goal differential, plus 52. Now do the
Wow.
math. Do the math. The difference between the Bruins and the Hurricanes would be by far and away the best mark in the league.
Mhm.
That's what's absurd about all this. Bruins won again yesterday, 7-0. This team is just when you think maybe they might finally be slowing down. They had a couple losses in a row, a couple slow starts. They come out and just dominate. 15 seconds into the game yesterday, they scored. They are currently 10 wins away from setting the excuse me, the record for most wins in an NHL regular season, which is currently tied between Detroit from 95-96 and obviously the Lightning from a couple years ago at 62. So at 53 wins, they need 10 out of their next 13 games to be victories to do that. Look, I think they're going to do it because that's about the pace that they're on. Every 13 games, they win at least 10 or 11. So, this is kind of what they've been doing all season. It'll be a nice thing to have, and certainly a nice callback when you're thinking about, excuse me, thinking about the success of the season. But ultimately, this is coming down to the playoffs, and I think this team is. I think they're. This is not a team that's going to be ill prepared. I think they have a lot of focus. I think they are not going to be caught by surprise by any team right now. And even at their worst, they're still the best team in hockey right now. It's a pretty incredible run for this team.
The impressive part, Ian, is they have so many different ways to beat you: 7-0, 3-2, whatever style of game
Mhm.
you want to play. They're pretty good at it, right? And they're deep. In the past, they had what, one and a half lines. You had the perfection line, and occasionally you get production from that second or third line. Now they're getting production from the third line on up. So they have more ways to beat you. They're deeper on the defensive core. The question mark when they had this little bump where they lost two in a row and had gone 1-3-1 over a 5 game stretch was more about the goaltending. I'm still confident in the goaltending.
Oh yeah.
You're the goaltender. I want to ask you this. Obviously, Allmark will be your go-to guy in the postseason, but we've seen Swayman play really well, especially the last few months. Is there ever an option of a quick hook with Allmark, or do you just go all in with him because he's
I
going to win the Vezina
Yeah.
Trophy and he's your guy? But you do have quite a capable backup there. Not actually a backup, but kind of a co-goalie.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's always a good question, but the thing is, when it comes to the postseason, and this is no disrespect to Jeremy Swayman, you need to stick with a guy. And I know over the long haul, over the course of an 82 game regular season, there's a lot more. You're not seeing the Marty Brodeurs of the world, playing 70 games every year, 68, 69, 70 games. You're seeing more of a split, which is fine. But when it comes to the postseason, and when you have a guy like Allmark who, this guy has, I mean, his detractors will sit there and say, well, of course they have a really good team in front of him. No, he's there's been a few situations here of late, and I can't specifically recall the one I'm thinking of just a couple weeks ago, but in a game where you can maybe sit there and say, well, if the Bruins lost that, maybe they start to stumble a little bit. He's phenomenal. He's positionally sound, and he has a knack for coming up with the big save at the big time. So even if he happens to struggle, um, unless it's a situation where the coach and this happens sometimes where the coach feels that just the team in front of him just is not doing him a good enough job, maybe he'll
Mhm.
take him out in that situation. But even if he has a rough period or a rough game, I don't think this team is worried one bit. And I think you implant more of that, excuse me, confidence in Olmark moving forward if you just stick excuse me, just stick with them. And look, the reality of it is, at the way they're playing right now, this may be one, like I said, and I said this about a month or so ago on the Big Bad Bruins podcast. This may be one of the better, more dominant playoff runs in NHL history when you consider, well, can 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 you just picture this team needs 16 wins to win a Stanley Cup. Generally, every time they get 16 wins, they lose maybe 3 games, 4 games in that stretch. So that tells you that very likely, if they're playing at the top of their game, this is going to be a very I'm not going to say not easy. That's not the right word, but there's no reason to believe that this Bruins team cannot go 16-4, 16-5, 16-6 this postseason. And that tells you that, well, they were in thorough control of every series that they were in. And right now, there's very few teams right now I can see them losing more than 2 games to. And I don't, honestly, I don't think they can lose more than 2 games to any team right now. So um
Even Carolina, who seems to match up with them, provided Carolina's in the conference finals.
well, they also
Rangers
lost,
are good too.
but they also lost one of their best
True.
players for the season.
Yep.
And that's a
That's
problem because, here's the thing: Carolina is having a phenomenal season, and this is a team that very clearly would be getting a lot more attention had it not been for what the Bruins are doing. And it kind of speaks to what the Bruins are doing because, well, as great of a season as Carolina has, the Bruins are 11 points clear of them with the same number of games played. That's a pretty significant number, and Carolina is having one of the better seasons. They would likely be number one over the last couple years. So, yeah, I obviously the history with Carolina, even when they gave you a really good shot, you usually had a pretty good, a lot of confidence in this team to beat Carolina. I think they do, just because I think they're deeper. I think they're more skilled, and when if you're Carolina, are you losing your best offensive player? You need to be able to create as much offense as possible. This isn't a Bruins team that's good on one part of the ice and not so great on the other. This is a team that has scored the second most goals, and only by virtue of the fact that they don't have Connor McDavid on their team. Edmonton's number one in goals scored this season, and they've by far let up the fewest goals. I think they're clear by 23, 24 goals by the next team. So this team is dominant on both ends of the ice. So Carolina is going to have to be dominant on both ends of the ice. And if they can't score, this team is not going to beat a Bruins team in 7 games. So, and that is, you can make an argument them and say like New Jersey, and obviously, you got to give some sort of credit to Tampa just because they've been there so often that, you don't want to overlook them. But the reality of it is from even if I was not a Bruins fan, if I was an objective observer, the only thing, convincing me that the Bruins could lose a playoff series right now is hopes and prayers, because right now there's nothing on paper and what we've seen over the course of 68, 69 games that suggests that any team in this league is going to beat them 4 out of 7. And that's a good recipe for Stanley Cup success if you're the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, when you won the Cup in 2011, you went 16-9. Remember, there was 3
Yeah.
7-game series. Heck, the Montreal series ended up going to 7 games, overtime, a 1-goal win against Tampa, and one of the most incredible games ever in the conference finals. And then you did what you did in Vancouver in Game 7. So that was kind of a magical run. That was a really good team, but Tim Thomas was phenomenal in the Stanley Cup final, and it was their year, right?
Yeah.
Where this team seems just loaded. They kind of remind me a little bit like the 2018 Red Sox, who went 11-3 in the postseason after winning 108 games. They were clearly the best team during the regular season and in the postseason. So yeah, if they can put together that type of run, sure, you could see a 16-5, 16-6 postseason, which is pretty phenomenal in hockey, because you're playing 4 different teams with different styles, and Lord knows if Connor McDavid shows up in the final, you always got to respect him because he's capable of winning a couple games on his own. But yeah, that would be darn impressive. They're ready to go. It seems that way. Taylor Hall back. Hopefully, they're deep, motivated, well coached. You got 2 goalies you can pick from. They seem to have all the answers.
I like it. So, all right, that's enough answers for us for today. We'll give you some more tomorrow. Just join us Tuesday, March 21st, first day of spring. Right? Is that it? Flowers blooming,
Yeah.
first day of spring. George finally getting married. Yeah, all that crap.
Yeah, George is all of that. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, either way, we're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to talk some more, maybe some Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. Actually, probably that. Maybe some more NFL free agency. So until then, give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, and of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com and check out all the latest and greatest going on over there. And in the meantime, listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. So thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you then.